Love, by definition, is a choice. It's a feeling, not forced. So the upside is that he loves you so much that he gives us free will. The downside is that we'll have to live with the consequences of other people's choices or our own. So if you don't like a rule at school, it's probably been put in place because someone before you broke it or gave the reason to make it. Suffering can sometimes be because of our own sin and choices. At times, suffering is inevitable and consequence of breaking God's law. There are physical laws of nature. For example, a hand put in the fire gets burned. There are moral laws. If a person abuses drugs, addictions, or worse, they may be the effect. Get behind the wheel while intoxicated and you can lose your car or license or hurt someone or someone else. Sometimes God actively judges sin in this life in a communal scale, such as the flood or Sodom and Gomorrah. And sometimes God's judgment falls on an individual because of their sin. But Jesus makes it clear that God does not automatically link sin with suffering in John 9:1-3. Because we live in a broken world, there are a lot of tragedies that happen in this world that aren't necessarily our fault. Things like earthquakes, floods, tornadoes, and other natural disasters. Justin Brierley put it like this: so we live in the tension of a broken world that is always awaiting renewal. The natural laws that operate are both a blessing and a curse. Tectonic plate activity renews the surface of the earth with minerals, yet wreaks havoc when humans build cities on the fault lines. Cell replication allows our bodies to grow and develop, yet can result in cancer when natural processes misfire. Death is a necessary part of the circle of life. It still remains our last enemy. Suffering was not a part of God's original created order. There was no suffering in the world before he made man, and man had a choice to obey God's one single rule and rebelled against God. There will be no suffering when God creates a new heaven and new earth in Revelation 21. There will be no more crying and no more pain. Suffering only entered the world because of Adam and Eve's sin. It is, therefore, an alien intrusion into God's word. Suffering is a result of sin, directly or indirectly. Because suffering can bring people to God. There are no atheists in foxholes. Does anyone here know what that saying means? Anyone want to take a guess? No?
That's God's hand raised.
Oh, well, yeah, you already know. Foxholes are the trenches that soldiers would be in. The saying means that when people are in the face of death or great suffering, they often pray or hope in some higher power. Another saying is, you only look up when you're flat on your back. This implies that we all have to be in a crux in our life to look for God's help. And God often uses these times to help us see him. Rarely do people who are doing well bother to look for God or realize how much they need saving. One great example of having to be put through a trial to see God are the Israelites in the Old Testament. They had to be put through that to come back to God. And time again, things were great. They'd stray. Sometimes hard things bring us closer to God. It's like God's way of waking us up. Even Jesus taught through suffering in Hebrews 5:8. Someone look that up?
Oh, you gotta be here.
Oh. Yeah?
Son though he was, he learned obedience from what he suffered.
There you go. I don't have this greatest aim back there, but y'all can try. There you go.
Nice.
Good.
Alright. We don't see the big picture like God does. What if, let's say, you started off the new year badly. January 1st sucked. It was the worst day of your life. But then the rest of the year was great. Maybe you got that gaming console you wanted, good grades, etc. Would January 1st still be on your mind? Would you still be grumbling about it? Probably not. This can be used as an analogy for our life and then heaven. This is not to say that our suffering here on earth is not valid and does not hurt us or God. It does. We as Christians just have heaven to look forward after all this suffering. We have volume, because I have a video.
Oh,
I'm not
you should
sure.
have one.
We have that to go.
Okay.
You have to take that.
I wasn't sure.
Oh, it doesn't work out?
What? I can promise you guys this. Oh, I know. It's not. Sam, you better not. I want that better version. Better.
I got it.
Do you have the next one?
I'm sending the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's time.
That's the one. I thought it was just too short.
I'll work out.
What kind of language is that?
You heard of the butterfly effect? The butterfly effect was a doctoral thesis written in 1963 by Edward Lorenz, and it was presented to the New York Academy of Sciences and laughed out of the place. It's crazy. The butterfly effect stated that a butterfly could flap its wings on one side of the world and set molecules of air in motion and move to other molecules of air that would eventually move other molecules of air that could eventually create a hurricane on the other side of the planet. The butterfly effect. It was nuts. But it was interesting. And because it was so interesting, it hung around forever in urban legend and movies and books until finally, physics professors in the mid-90s proved the butterfly effect was accurate and viable, and it worked every time. And not just with butterflies either. It worked with any form of moving matter, including people. They gave it the status of a law. Just like the law of gravity, the butterfly effect is now known as the law of sensitive dependence upon initial conditions. And it works every time. See, Chamberlain is a human example of the butterfly effect. One guy who made one move 140 years ago whose effect still ripples through our lives today. And you are no less an example of the butterfly effect than Chamberlain was. Everything you do matters. Every move you make, every action you take matters not just for you or your family or your hometown. Everything you do matters to all of us and forever. I was in a hotel room a couple of years ago. This was before Peter Jennings died, and I was ironing the left sleeve of a white shirt and about to go down and talk to a group of people, and the TV was kind of halfway, to me, halfway on, and Peter Jennings was doing that Person of the Week thing that ABC News, they still do it, but he was doing the Person of the Week where they highlight somebody and tell about what they, and while I kind of halfway paying attention, I hear him say, and so the Person of the Week for, and he gives the date, he said, is Norman Borlaug. And then when he said Norman Borlaug, I put the iron down, I ran in front of the TV set, my jaw was around my knees. Norman Borlaug, I didn't know the dude was still alive. I knew who he was. I had written a book called The Lost Choice that tells the proof about how much a life matters, and I'd wrapped a story around it, and I'd done some research, and I'd found out about Norman. I had like 2 paragraphs in the book about Norman Borlaug. I knew who he was. They had calculated that his work, hybridizing corn and wheat for arid climates, his work through the years, the plains of Siberia, the Dust Bowl of Western Africa, our own desert Southwest, South and Central America, that his work, hybridizing corn and wheat for arid climates, had saved from famine the lives of over 2 billion people.